we come to it at last. It is, of course, the ups and downs for the season finale of Star Trek Picard's third season, and as it stands, Star Trek Picard overall. Before I go on, as per usual, I want to say thank you so much to everyone who follows us along every week. Thank you to everyone for liking, for subscribing, and thank you to the people who are sending good wishes to Chris. I am told he is on an IV drip somewhere and is receiving all of the care we can send him. So that is good right now. Let's get straight into the ups and downs. We obviously closed last week with a little bit of a conundrum, what with all of the young people in Starfleet becoming, oh I don't know, Borg. We open this week with a drastic warning from the Federation's president. Walter Koenig makes a very surprising cameo appearance this week as the Federation president, Chekhov. Beautiful. To say I was not expecting this. This is a wonderful, locking this in with Trek continuity as a whole, but also just the last time we got Walter Koenig in Star Trek was Generations back in 1994. How could this possibly get better? I couldn't not do this. Our Latinum up goes to the choice of name for the character. It's President Anton Chekhov. Anton as in Anton Yelchin, who performed as Chekhov in the Kelvin Universe films and who sadly passed away in 2016. What an absolutely beautiful tribute. And I know you're probably thinking like, hang on, Sean, we're like 3 seconds into the video. What do you mean there's the Latinum up? Don't worry, it's not like it's about to go all downhill from here. I kind of liked this episode. As I said, the Federation is in a little bit of a dire situation. Space Dock is doing its best to hold off a full frontal assault from the entire Federation fleet. We have the Enterprise D, which, gorgeous as it is completely antiquated. So when that drops out of warp, it's a bit like, it's nice to see ya. Now, thankfully, they're not going to go straight to Earth, because if they do, they'll get blown out of the sky. No, what they do is they detect a Borg cube and the surface of, well, I say the surface, the gases of Jupiter. Not one ship in the fleet picked up that Borg cube? Okay, the entire fleet was there before it got taken over. They arrive at Jupiter and they find a whopper of a cube. This thing is enormous. It looks like one of those mega cubes that would have been seen in Star Trek Armada when you get like 8 cubes come together to make a big one, because we've seen the Enterprise D beside cubes in Q Who and Best of Both Worlds, but here the Enterprise D is like minuscule next to this one. The cube drops its shields because it's inviting Picard over. Now, we as an audience have an idea who's waiting, but Worf asks the question, what if Jack has already been taken? And Beverly turns around and says, no! Are you kidding me? Worf gets denied once again? Picard, Riker, and Worf come together to make a threesome and beam over to the Borg cube, but not before Picard can give an emotional goodbye to his crew. It's actually really touching, because this really does feel in this moment like it might be the last time this crew see each other. And remember, we've been teased all throughout the season that don't be expecting everyone to make it home for dinner. When they beam over to the cube, you do have a feeling that maybe one or all of them aren't coming home again. Back on board the Titan, you've got Seven, Raffi, Dr. Oak, and a few of the other crew who are over 25 and therefore not affected by the Borg signal, manage to retake the bridge. Now, they've got to move quickly, because if the Borg figure this out, the Titan might go the way of the Excelsior. There's this massive scale of assault, and the worry is that Earth is going to fall. Now, there's two conversations. There's a conversation on the Titan about this, and of course on the Enterprise about this. If Earth falls, everything else in the galaxy will fall. This is something that is by no means unique to Picard Season 3, but Vulcan, Andor, Tellar, Bajor, there's all these other planets. It's a bit... But Star Trek has a tendency of doing this. That's like, oh, if Earth is the be-all and the end-all, well, bloody move onto other planets then. Stop centralizing everything. They do, however, figure out on the Titan that the Fleet Command protocol is really based on line of sight, and wouldn't you know it, the Titan has a cloaking device. I don't understand the line of sight in terms of logic, because if this whole idea was you can command the entire fleet to do whatever it is wherever you are, but you have to see each other, then the first time an asteroid goes past a ship, you're kind of screwed. So that took me out of the moment. But It was awesome seeing the Titan do those strafing runs, where basically it's taking on the entire fleet. So they're buying the time that the Enterprise D needs to get the job done over on Jupiter. Worf, Riker and Picard have to part ways, and Picard finds himself in the main chamber. Now we see Jack all done up in his nice new Borgy outfit, but behind Jack, of course, is a very welcome return. Alice Krieg's voice returns to Star Trek, portraying this very Geiger-esque version of the Borg Queen. She's bloody scary looking. There's some really excellent prosthetics work going on with it. The performer's name is Jane Seymour. This was a really different take on the Queen, something I really liked, because it's very horror movie. There was a lot of suggestive horror in things like First Contact, where you have the Queen lowering into the body like that. You know, nearly 30 years later, I'm still having very strange feelings about that scene. This one was terrifying. And of course, this Queen has arms, which I thought was bloody scary as well. Really good design, so absolute kudos to the design of the Queen in this scene. There is a very heated exchange between Picard and the Queen. The Queen identifies herself as Jack's mother, so of course Picard pulls out his phaser and starts shooting to let her know how much he feels about that. He correctly says this: she is not his mother in any way. All that she is a parasite that has found a way to weaponize DNA. Yes, there was Borg DNA in Picard. Nothing to do with Jack. She's just exploited a weakness. Picard is in full dad mode here, defending his son. And for this scene, the fact that Ed Speleers has to stand there and just rattle off as the collective, it actually really works for me. This entire exchange is one of the highlights of the episode. Back out in the hallways, you've got Riker and Worf trying to find the location of this big central transmitter that the Enterprise will have to try and take down to stop the transmissions going throughout all of the drones. Just as they're about to find it, wouldn't you know, some of the Borg wake up and they're bloody scary. I love the design of these Borg. I think they really work. And when these Borg take on Worf, I mean like full on, he's pulling the Kurlev out and he's going like deflector dish assimilate this on them, and they're not backing down. A lot of the times in previous encounters with the Borg, you might be thinking that pull out a Tommy gun, Borg is down. Pull out a knife, Borg is down. Because, you know, slower moving projectiles or bladed weapons get through their shield. They would have assimilated Klingons, which means they would have assimilated Klingon fighting techniques. And that's not something we've generally seen. It was also, of course, a bit scary when you see Worf get shot twice. That was a bit scary. When himself and Riker duck in behind this panel and the two Borg are still coming at them, and, you know, Riker tries to pick up the sword, which is just so funny. It was like, it's so heavy. And then Worf was like, just check the hilt. And there's a phaser there. You know, Riker's able to turn around. He dispatches the Borg pretty quickly. And he looks at Worf and says, you've had a phaser this whole time. And Worf just goes, swords are fun. Brilliant. Back at Earth, it's bad news for Space Dock. The barrage of the fleet finally gets through. And it's quite the moment. Because while we haven't known this Space Dock for very long, just the legacy of Space Dock in general, really, like, I felt this. So it starts to go down, and it seems to be tied in with, say, the planetary shield, that when Space Dock goes down, the shield goes down. So it looks like right now Earth is pretty defenseless, and what's more, you've got Sydney and Alandra, Borg Forge, firing their phasers at the cloaking device on the Titan. Not good. Suddenly the Titan's in full sight again, which means the collective might be able to take full control of the Titan. So it's getting down to the wire. Now they find a way through the cube in, I'm sorry, I have to say it, did this give everyone Millennium Falcon Return of the Jedi vibes? I mean, they even talk about having to take out the turrets. In fact, Crusher taken up there, firing those torpedoes and phasers. Now, yeah, it would have been nice to not have to have, in the last 20 years things have happened. It would have been nice to say, no, she could have done that beforehand. But I'm glad to see it, don't get me wrong. Flying in and out of all those turrets, and then Data taking the ship in, and Deanna sensing enjoyment. Oh my god. It was really well handled. Now, This is something I've thought for a while. It was strange to see the Enterprise D move this way. The reason I think for that is because we're so used to seeing Galaxy-class ships as a slower aircraft carrier type of vessel. Think of specifically the Sacrifice of Angels, when you have those Galaxy-class ships taking on those Galar-class destroyers, and they look like they're big, massive chonkers of ships that you do not want to pick a fight with. So we're used to seeing them move a little bit slower. Obviously they move at warp, you know, it's the maneuverability. So seeing the Enterprise D flying up and down and side to side like that is, it's a bit strange how clean it gets through. This is not like the Matrix where you've got the Nebuchadnezzar bouncing off the walls every few seconds. The Enterprise D gets through without a scratch all the way through to the middle. Data gets them there and they get to the central transmitter, and wouldn't you know it, you blow that thing up, the cube's going with it. I bet the Borg are kind of regretting putting their shields down now, aren't they? We get a silent, beautiful scene where they're talking about, if you destroy the transmitter and you destroy the cube, everyone down there is pretty much screwed. Which means, of course, Riker, Worf, Picard, and Jack. So it is willingly sacrificing family for both Troy and Crusher. Troy is the one to say it. If we destroy this, we lose everyone down there. If we don't do it, we lose everyone else. Crusher, quite understandably, does not want to capitulate, and it's Geordi who looks at her, because Geordi knows his two girls have been assimilated. He knows, and she nods. LeVar Burton, Gates McFadden. That scene, pitch perfect. Throughout all of this, you've got Captains Riker and Worf, who are... There was always a great, I suppose, bromance rivalry between them anyway. But seeing them here, the quips they're getting off each other, it's just fun. For example, Worf saying, "Good, for a few moments this afternoon I thought we might actually survive this." And Riker smiles. When we get to the central chamber, you have Riker and Worf watching what's happening and sort of knowing that they can't leave without Picard. And if Picard's not leaving, they're not leaving. Again, Jonathan Frakes, Michael Dorn, which leads me to, of course, Patrick Stewart and Ed Speleers. First of all, take the ups right there. Patrick Stewart gives some of his best performances of recent years, if not more, in this scene. They join each other in the collective, and it's sort of said that Jack himself kind of is the collective, but being controlled by the Queen. So he is able to communicate directly with Jack by plugging himself into the machine. Now, there's a very important line here where the Queen says only he can choose to leave. I will come back to that in a moment. Picard goes in and he tries to remind Jack what it is to have family, what it is to have connection, but what it is to have individuality. He tells Jack about his years of waiting in the vineyard, waiting to die, and how he had originally sought a family via Starfleet. It's very, very touching, and it is what gets through to Jack, especially when Picard says, "If you won't leave, I will stay here with you." Because that's something the Borg don't offer. They don't offer individual love. Yes, there is this euphoric community, which is, I think, a slight retcon that more recent Star Trek has added to the collective that I actually quite like, that there would be this sense of euphoria while in the collective. Now, obviously, there's many examples in the past where that doesn't match up, but I think it would be a great way of forcing individual drones, if they ever become disconnected to the hive, to try and connect again. Anyway, it's enough to wake Jack up. It is a strong moment. You have Jack and Picard facing off against the Queen. Jack says to the Queen, "You are the one who's alone." It is powerful. So Ed Speleers and Patrick Stewart, as I'd already said, get an up in that. Now that was very easy to disconnect from the collective. Oh, okay, so maybe the stakes weren't that high. Maybe that wasn't the point. And it was more the point of finding love and family, just for the fact of we know how difficult it is when you're separated from the collective. And, you know, Picard's been dealing with scars for 35 years. He literally says it in the episode. And he didn't just deal with them in the episode family, like, you know, we've dealt with that for years after. So yeah, that it just bears mention that, you know, there's kind of, all right, yeah, I was assimilated, but sure, that was on Tuesday. Because like, if you think about, you know, if you walk near a nanoprobe, you're assimilated effectively. And I know the Queen did say only he can choose to leave. Okay, it's a little bit like, oh, all right then. So for me, when the entire thing of the season was this mystery with Jack, and it's all building up to, you know, how bad it is, and then it was quite easy to just walk away, that's my trillion down of the episode. It was just a little bit too easy. So they leave together from this alcove, but they're still kind of screwed because the Enterprise D has fired its torpedoes and phasers, and, you know, they've destroyed the beacon, and they've only got 60 seconds. Now, let me just say this. This is Hollywood 60 seconds, so actually they've got about 10 minutes. They're fine. Cannot give enough praise to this moment. The shockwaves are rippling through the cube. The Queen knows it's done. She's screaming in rage. You've got Jack and Picard are like, at least we go out together. And Riker, in this heartbreaking moment, says, we'll be waiting for you, Imzadi, me and our son. And of course, if there's something powerful, as is already shown in this scene, the power of love, Deanna picks up on this. She says, I know where they are, and she takes the helm. Boom. Can we please retire the joke that Deanna crashed the Enterprise D? Can we just retire it? I think, if nothing else, she gets a redemption here, because she jumps behind the helm, she pilots the Enterprise D all the way over, and she pulls up over that area like she is a chav doing wheelies in a Staples car park. They beam them out of there, and the cube goes boom, in a very impressive shot, I might add. That is brilliant. Now, the Borg drones who have managed to basically get back up to the bridge of the Titan, oops, they're freed from the Collective's control, so you get this great scene where Sydney is pointing her phaser at Seven, wakes up, and straight away realizes tears are streaming down her face as she's apologizing to Seven. And of course, Seven is probably the one person in all of Starfleet who understands exactly what everyone has just gone through. So their hug, another up from me. All around them, you see there is the, I suppose, wreckage of an awful lot of the fleet. Now, I think by the looks of everything, it's more that the fleet has just been kind of shut down as opposed to destroyed or damaged. There is a lot of like wreckage, but half of that's probably from Space Dock. Sorry, Space Dock. So yeah, so I don't think the fleet's been destroyed or anything. I do have to address, where are the California classes? Where are the Parliament classes? Where are the Dauntless classes? Where are the Protostar classes? Where are the Obina classes? And also, no one wants to see the copy and paste fleet back again. But it's only been a couple of years. They must have retired an awful lot of Inquiry class ships. Again, I know I'm going to stop beating a dead horse. I know, small fleet. Yeah. I will say just listen, this kind of ties back into our point last week with the uniforms and everything. It just seems like, you have a whole fleet, use it, please, thank you. We get just a quick succession of just brilliant moments after this. Everyone comes back on board the bridge. You've got Jack has pulled off, I'd say that hurt. Anyway, pulled off his Borg faceplant, and there's a beautiful moment where the three of them, Crusher, Jack and Picard, embrace. You've got Riker and Troy back together. You've got Geordi and Data just kind of clapping. You know, that's love. You know that's love. And then you have Worf getting a well-earned nap. Snoring Worf is an up from me. Beautiful shot of the Enterprise D flying alongside the Titan. That is just lovely. With a captain's log. We do a little bit of chopping and changing of time here. And what I mean by that is that, so we're shown Admiral Crusher, taken up, has implemented a system to deprogram, maybe it's the wrong word, but DNA feels weirder to say, the young members of Starfleet and erase this Borg DNA from them, and also has managed to discover changelings. Do you remember them? This is, you can see there's a new Delta that Admiral Crusher is wearing. So I think this one is actually a little bit further ahead in time. Then we go back a little bit and we get a beautiful scene. Welcome back, Tim Russ. Tuvok and Seven talking about her, well, future career plans. And there's someone else who wants a word as well. Liam Shaw makes an appearance in this episode, recommending, before any of the events of this season happened, that 7 of 9 be promoted to captain on return from this shakedown cruise. He always had faith in her. He was just a hard ass. As he says himself, he's a relic of a bygone time. He's by the book and the book is boring. And 7 is a rule breaker, and if she is breaking rules, they were probably made to be broken. It's a great scene, and you can see how much it affects her. And Tuvok, she had preemptively resigned, but Tuvok just goes, resignation denied. I think, because people have been going all season like, are we going to get Janeway? Are we going to get Janeway? I think it actually hits deeper that Tuvok and 7 are the ones in these scenes. Because if you think, Tuvok was very like 7 on Voyager. He was alone. He had Janeway, of course, so did 7. But he didn't have friends. He was quite isolated from the rest of the crew, including the other Vulcans on the crew. You know, at least there were other Vulcans. For the largest amount of time, there were no other Borg. To see these two characters come together like this after years, this was beautiful. And I think this worked better than any other version that this scene could have been. We have a scene that just made me beam smiling. The vindication of Raffi. How long have we been waiting for this? Raffi should have been vindicated at the end of season 1. She was proved completely correct. And her family still didn't want anything to do with her. A very nice man of honor leaked all of her classified missions and medals of valor to her family. Wore a few sly old dog. That whole friendship is beautiful. But when he closes it off by saying, Raffi, warrior of the House of Musiker, yeah. It is, of course, great fun to see the scene between Deanna Troi and Data, but the scene that immediately follows, we got 1 year later, we're back at the Fleet Museum. You knew we were getting it up for that. I mean, it's just automatic up. And you see the Enterprise D taking its pride of place beside the Stargazer, beside the Enterprise A. It's wonderful. You have Riker, Picard, and Geordi on the bridge, and they talk about how she always took care of us, taken up. And of course there is Majel Barrett's voice taken up, with Riker saying he always misses that voice. Beautiful, tiny little moments, and just, so good, so good. And we're nearly there. This is just one of the endings. So the next thing we see, there's a shuttle en route to the recently rebuilt space dock. You've got Admirals Crusher and Picard, and is that Ensign Jack? They talk about how Jack's on an accelerated Starfleet program, and he says, well, he thinks the family name might have helped. It's not actually said about whether he's changed his name to Picard or not. I'm assuming he didn't. I think it's still Crusher, but I mean, like, you know, my dad's Jean-Luc Picard. You know, although he's probably not the one doing that. But he's been assigned to this ship, and Picard says names mean almost nothing. So when the shuttle pulls up over, is it the Titan? Is it the Titan? No. It's the rechristened USS Enterprise, NCC 1701G. How could I not given up to what will be the next page of Star Trek's legacy? On the bridge you have Jack walks in, and he's a bit of a cocky twat, but it's more or less, it's a safe space, because you've got Lieutenant LaForge sitting there, who knows him very well and knows to ignore him. And thankfully he knows his first officer pretty well. I believe you know her, she's a warrior of the House of Musiker. But it's Captain 7 of 9 who really steals the spotlight. If ever there was a setup for a spin-off series, here it is. Captain 7, First Officer Raffi on the Enterprise G. Gimme. Gimme, gimme, gimme. It is just set up for all of the fun. They take off, they fly out, they go to warp, we don't find out what 7's catchphrase is going to be. That's fine, we'll get that in the spin-off. That's another one of the endings. Now we're on to another ending, and this ending takes place in 10 Forward. Now, we assume it's the one in Los Angeles because Geordi does mention that Guinan's giving them the side-eye, and we have this great scene of just all of them just together. They're playing cards, taken up. Are you kidding me? Finishing on poker? Yeah. That's an up. Also, to add to that, just having them all back together at the end with Data, with Dr. Crusher, everyone together, except, where the hell is Laris? This is a beautiful, beautiful thing. However, what is not addressed in any way is the absence of Laris. Now, Laris was in episode 1, and there was quite a discussion about how Laris was like, you need to go after Beverly. You need to go and support her. This was before we knew anything about Jack. I will meet you on Sheltalk 4. Is she still sitting on Sheltalk 4? Is she still nursing a Romulan ale going, where the bloody hell is he? So for me, it was a down that she wasn't there. More so than that, this is a fan favorite character. And hey, look, call it Irish bias. The fact that she was set up as such a large, important character and then not addressed, not brought back at all, a line of dialogue. I have to get home to Laris, or, you know, Laris went the way of Siobhan between now and then. For me, we've already given a trillium down, so I'm introducing a trilithium down. It's basically the equivalent of the dilithium up, so it's going to take away 1 up. No, the lack of Laris, it did feel like a hole in the story for this season. And especially when we were teased with her in episode 1, that to me was just, it had to be addressed. With that final scene of Q and Jack, the episode almost comes to an end with our 1, 2, 3, 4, how many endings? The only thing that's left is, as everything fades to black, it comes right back up again, and Samwise Gamgee finally gets back to his hobbit hole and turns around to Rosie and says, well, I'm back. Sometimes the jokes are for me more than anything else. It had quite a lot of endings. I'm okay with this. We get the Star Trek universe intro changed to the Enterprise D and a Borgified Delta. The TNG intro nebula from the TNG intro from seasons 3 onwards. Of course, Anton, Chekhov. The burned saucer section, which you correctly pointed out last week when the Enterprise D was shown again, that burned from going into the into Viridian 3. On the view screen, we see the President's message and we see an awful lot of writing either side of the Federation logo. One of that bit of writing is General Order 12. General Order 12 is a callback to the Wrath of Khan, which states, on the approach of any vessel where communications have not been established, of course alluding to the scene between the Reliant and the Enterprise, that they should raise their shields. Also have Starfleet Order 104. There's a couple of ones here that could reference. There's Starfleet Order 104 Section B Paragraph 1A, which is that in the absence of the ship's assigned captain, a flag officer has the authority to assume command. That would have been seen in episodes like The Doomsday Machine and Tinker Tenor Dr. Spy. Now there's also Starfleet Order 104 Section C, which is, when proven with admissible evidence that the flag officer was medically or psychologically unfit for command, a ranking officer can relieve them. It must be backed up by the CMO. That would have been seen again, Doomsday Machine, also Enterprise Hatchery, Voyager, Tinker Tenor, Dr. Spy, and Prodigy Supernova Part 1. We then have Regulation 19, Section C. This is a reference to Discovery's second season episode Brother. It allows an officer to assume command if one of 3 reasons are met. 1, an imminent threat is detected. 2, where the lives of Federation citizens are in question. And 3, no officer of equal or higher rank is there to mitigate the threat. Next up, there is Code 1. Now, Code 1 is for total or imminent disaster, possible invasion. The Federation is currently or soon to be in open war. All Starfleet personnel are to assume tactical alert. This would have been seen in Errand of Mercy, The Trouble with Tribbles, or The Alternative Factor, all original series episodes. We have Protocol 672 Alpha, which we saw earlier on this episode, earlier on this season, in the episode Imposters, that if Starfleet is ever compromised, that is called into action. We also get a reference then to Maintenance Channel 99 Delta, which we learned about last week, and Codec Myriad, remember that one from episode 1. Anton Chekhov references his father, Pavel Chekhov. When you see the Enterprise D fly past, you see not only the burn saucer section, which by the way should be an up, also you see the OG observation lounge through the back, because it's blinking you'll miss it, but you can see the gold statues taken up for that as well. Geordi, that's attention to detail. Worf gets denied, absolutely hilarious. Majel Barrett makes a return. The TNG transporter sound makes a return. The Borg power distribution nodes, which we saw in the Best of Both Worlds, they make a return. We get a reference to the Unimatrix. Locutus's costume is on Jack, a reference to Seven saying upload all of the prefix codes that we have to the fleet to scramble their shields. This, of course, being a reference back to Wrath of Khan. There is a reference to No More Collective, this leading directly on from Star Trek Voyager's Endgame. We have the Wrath of Khan tricorder noise once again when Worf and Riker beam over to the cube. Now, the Queen says that she invited Picard to watch your futures end. We get the TNG theme as the Enterprise is shooting so many parts of the cube. We get the 47 decal on the ops panel. That was a bit cool. We get a funny moment where once space dock falls, the fleet starts to target all of the main centres of population. And if you live in Liverpool, you're kind of f***ed. Although I will say, Ireland's not targeted at all, so there's footage from First Contact played over the scene between Jack and Jean-Luc. Inside the collective is very evocative of that episode of Prodigy, Let Sleeping Borg Lie, when Zero is in the collective. And also, we've seen inside a version of it before with Unimatrix Zero. Worf comments that it's a fine day to die with honour. Troy at the helm, of course. When Troy later on is going through her holiday options, we get Vulcan, Andor, Bajor, Omicron Ceti 3, which we would have seen before in This Side of Paradise, the one where Spock gets shot by a flower and starts to laugh. Trill, Zadar 4, which is actually a reference to an early season 1 episode of The Next Generation, When the Bow Breaks. Lieutenant Harry Bernard Sr. was stationed there with his son, Harry Jr., and it was home to a species of dolphin. There's an up for this bit. In the Fleet Museum scene, when they're stood on the bridge of the Enterprise D, the musical cue is To Live Forever. It's by Dennis McCarthy and it's from Star Trek Generations. That was a definite up from me as well. And of course, this reference, she's always taken care of us. For me, that's a direct callback to Encounter at Farpoint, Admiral McCoy saying, treat her like a lady and she'll always bring you home. We get a reference, of course, to Guinan. Worf is teaching a course on Mugatu meditation. Data really wants to finish that limerick. There was a young lady from Venus, and they all shouted at him to stop. We get a reference to blood wine. Picard then does one of those poetic drive-by observations. He's asked to give a toast. So he chooses this exchange that was by the character Brutus from Julius Caesar, Act 4, Scene 3. There is a tide in the affairs of men, which, taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. Omitted all the voyage of their life, is bound in shallows and in miseries. On such a full sea are we now afloat, and we must take the current when it serves, or lose our ventures. Basically, it means act now, strike while you have the power, and was that not what this whole episode was about? We see them playing poker, and Geordi says about Ryza 6 cards just as the credits begin to roll. So this has been a lovely episode. Oh, you knew I was going to talk about it. So we go to the Enterprise. It's flying in front of the sun again. God, I love those scenes. And Ensign Jack is taking his toys out of his bag. Believe me, I know the feeling. We've got a gold Enterprise D. We've got what looks to be a gold Titan Enterprise G there as well. It could be the refit Constitution. I'm not going to lie, it wasn't a very clear file I was looking at. There is also a publicity photo. It's of Gates McFadden and Patrick Stewart at the 1988 KSET premiere, which we were able to find on Getty Images, so thank you very much for that. Of course, John Delancey makes a cameo as Q. Did you all really think you'd seen the last of Q? We're dropping heavy hints for sequel series. Yeah, we're going to be a sequel series. And of course he says, yes, Jean-Luc's trial is over. Yours is just beginning, my friend. I mean, also he says, humans think so linear. You know, he could easily have, in the time where he was, you know, meeting Picard in season 2 and everything, he could have gone off and done everything. Time means nothing to Q. So, easy. Absolutely easy. Works for me perfectly. Beautiful way of ending the episode. And of course, he gives a shout out to The Next Generation. Folks, thank you so much. There was just so much in this episode. We tried to cover it all. If we missed something, which we definitely did, let us know in the comments below. What did you think of the season overall? Now that it's finished, now that you've seen the whole story, let us know. We are probably going to do a couple of videos. One, we're going to trace the history of the Enterprise D so far. We're also probably going to do a retrospective of the whole season. You can catch an exclusive interview with Todd Stashwick, Captain Liam Shaw himself, over on the Clone Star Pod channel. That will be dropping Friday night, and you will be able to catch highlights of that interview here on Trek Culture on Saturday night as well. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us this season. Whether you agreed with every point we had or you disagreed, that's cool. Let's all just be good to each other, right? Can we just be absolutely unified in saying thank you so much to everyone who put together this season of Star Trek? It's been a hoot, and for all of the ups and downs, I have thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you very much to them. Thank you to you for following along. Everyone, you know the score. To follow us, go over to Twitter at Trek Culture. We're on Instagram at TrekCultureYT. I'm at Sean Ferrick. Chris, when he wakes from his slumbers, will be at EditChrisEdit on both Twitter and Instagram. And thank you so much. Look after each other. Let's take the positivity that we have felt from this season and bring it to our next season as well. The next ups and downs will be beginning in June with the return of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. You are all wonderful. You are all awesome. Live long and prosper. Make it so.